In every life journey, we walk hand in hand with people we call friends, family, companions, but not everyone who walks beside you is meant to uplift you. Some people, even those closest to us, unknowingly or intentionally carry within them the seeds of negativity, envy, manipulation, deception, selfishness. As Shi Heng Yi often teaches, demons are not creatures with horns and tails. The real demons are energies, thoughts, patterns, behaviors that slowly drain your inner peace, distort your path, and destroy your self-worth. These demons can hide in plain sight, sometimes even behind a smile. So how do we see them? How do we protect our energy without turning cold or paranoid? We must train our awareness, sharpen our observation, and most importantly, master our own mind, because when you evolve, not everyone will cheer for you. When you rise, the shadows around you get darker. This is not a sign to be afraid, it's a sign to be aware. Here are 7 powerful signs to help you spot the demons, not to hate, but to protect your soul and grow wiser on your journey. Growth is uncomfortable not just for you, but for the people around you, especially those who have built their sense of identity around who you used to be. When you begin to evolve, when you set new goals, adopt new habits, or change your mind, it can be deeply unsettling for those who haven't done the same work on themselves. These people might not even realize they're trying to pull you back, but you'll hear it in the tone of their voice when you speak about your goals. You'll see it in the way their encouragement is wrapped in sarcasm. You'll notice how their support is laced with subtle doubt. That's great, but don't get your hopes up. I hope it works for you, but people like us. Be careful, you know how these things usually end. It's never direct, it's passive, quiet, camouflaged. These are the statements that, on the surface, sound like concern or realism, but beneath the surface, they're seeds of limitation. What they're really saying is, don't grow too far because I'm not ready to grow with you. These individuals are often scared that your change will highlight their stagnation, scared that your success will shine a light on their complacency, and instead of rising with you, they try to anchor you in the past. They may use your past failures to remind you of who you really are. They may mock your new routines, your reading, your training, your meditation, all as a way of pulling you back to the level where they feel safe. Shi Heng Yi speaks of this clearly. If your light makes them uncomfortable, they are not walking beside you. They are holding you back. And it's not always malicious, sometimes it's unconscious. But whether it's intentional or not, the impact is the same. You begin to doubt yourself. You begin to question your path. You start thinking small again, not because you lost your vision, but because someone close to you kept dimming it. These are not just casual remarks. These are energetic attacks, soft ones, but powerful, because when they come from someone you trust, they go deeper. You internalize them. You carry their fear as your own. And slowly, you start shrinking. That is why awareness is vital. To grow, you must protect your vision, especially in its early stages. A seed doesn't need judgment. It needs light. If those around you are pouring shade instead of sunlight, you must see it for what it is: resistance to your evolution. Your growth is not the problem. Their comfort with mediocrity is. One of the most dangerous kinds of negativity isn't loud, it's silent. It hides beneath compliments, lurks behind encouragement, and disguises itself as friendship or even love. These are the people who smile when you win, but secretly wish you hadn't. They clap for you in public, but criticize you in private. They act like supporters, but in reality, they're competitors, and worse. They're competitors who don't want to compete to improve themselves. They compete to tear you down. Shi Heng Yi teaches that not every ally is an ally of the spirit. Some are allies of the ego, connected to you only as long as you don't outshine them. They are fine with you succeeding. As long as you don't succeed more than they do, they are fine with you healing. As long as your peace doesn't surpass theirs. These people will rarely challenge you directly. Instead, they operate through subtle jabs and hidden messages. When you tell them about a new idea, they may smile, but then say, "That's nice. I was actually thinking about doing that last year." When you land an opportunity, they respond with their own, "Oh, that's great, I actually just got something even better." At first, it feels small, but over time, these micro-competitions become a pattern. It becomes clear that they're not walking with you, they're racing you. The most deceptive part, they still do kind things, they still show up, they might still speak words of support, but the energy underneath is not love, it's rivalry. And rivalry without transparency is betrayal. This type of person doesn't push you to grow, they push you to doubt yourself. Their hidden goal is to stay one step ahead, not for growth's sake, but so they don't feel inferior in your presence. Even worse, they may mimic you. They adopt your ideas, your goals, your style not out of inspiration, but appropriation, and they rush to implement what you've just started to explore. Why? Because they want to beat you at your own race, one they've constructed in their minds. They don't want to see you lead, they want to be seen as the one who did it first. And when you succeed, it wounds their ego instead of lifting their spirit. This false support is especially toxic because it creates confusion. You begin to question, am I imagining this? Shouldn't I be grateful that they're around? You feel guilty for suspecting someone who has technically done nothing wrong, but your intuition never lies. The energy speaks even when the words don't. Real support doesn't need to compete. A true friend celebrates your wins like their own. They don't need to match your journey, they respect it. They don't need to copy your purpose, they honor their own. To protect your energy, you must learn to read the truth behind the applause. Some claps echo with love, others with fear. The mask of support is dangerous because it leads you to trust someone who's quietly rooting against you. And in that silence, your confidence begins to erode. You feel the tension, but you can't quite name it, until one day the mask slips and the truth is revealed. One of the most corrosive forces in any environment is gossip, the subtle, toxic exchange of words that may seem harmless, but carries the power to destroy trust, connection, and inner peace. When someone constantly speaks negatively about others behind their backs, it's not just a flaw in their character, it's a reflection of a deeper disturbance within their spirit. Shi Heng Yi often emphasizes that what people say about others in private reveals more about them than about the people they're discussing. You must observe carefully. When a person constantly brings drama into your space, when their conversations revolve around who did what, who failed, who made a mistake, who looks worse, they are not sharing information. They are sharing energy, and that energy is heavy, low, vibrational, and draining. These individuals are agents of chaos, whether they know it or not. They thrive in environments where confusion, suspicion, and judgment run high. Why? Because chaos gives them control. As long as attention is being pulled towards someone else's faults, no one is looking at their own darkness. Gossip becomes their shield, a way to avoid self-reflection. But in doing so, they poison every space they enter. The worst part is how subtle it can be. It's not always loud or malicious. Sometimes it comes dressed in concern. I'm only telling you this because I care. Or wrapped in humor. Don't take it seriously, I'm just joking. But the intention is always the same: to lower the vibration of the space, to plant seeds of doubt, to feed your mind with judgment. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to absorb that energy. You find yourself thinking more critically of others. You begin to speak in the same tone. You become suspicious, bitter, divided. Your heart becomes less open. Your spirit becomes restless, and you don't know why until you realize it's not your energy. It was transferred to you through gossip, through stories that were never yours to carry, through words that never belonged in your mind. Shi Heng Yi teaches that silence is not just an absence of sound, it's a presence of peace. And those who constantly gossip fear silence because in stillness, their own minds become loud. They fear what they would hear if they stopped judging others long enough to look inward. So they keep the noise alive, the drama burning, the cycles repeating. And they bring others into that fire with them. But understand this, the mouth that gossips to you will one day gossip about you. Loyalty to drama is not loyalty to people. If someone has the time and energy to constantly dissect the lives of others, they are not protecting their own peace, and they won't protect yours either. You must ask yourself, what kind of conversations am I allowing into my life? Are they lifting me up or weighing me down? Words carry energy. Every conversation is an exchange, and if someone's words consistently leave you feeling anxious, judgmental, or drained, then their presence is not a blessing, it's a burden. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors with locks. You decide who enters and how far they go. They are not a rejection of others, they are a declaration of self-respect. But the moment you start enforcing boundaries, especially with people who have become comfortable overstepping them, resistance begins to surface. And one of the most manipulative tools people use in response is guilt. You'll recognize it in phrases like, "Ever since you started focusing on yourself, you've changed. Oh, so now you think you're better than everyone. I guess you don't care about this relationship anymore. You used to always be there for me, what happened to you?" At first, these words seem like expressions of disappointment or hurt. But if you look deeper, they're not about concern for the relationship, they're about a loss of control. Because your boundaries disrupt the dynamic where they could take without giving, demand without respecting, and speak without listening. And now they feel threatened, not because you've become cold, but because you've become conscious. Shi Heng Yi teaches that true power lies in mastering yourself, not others. When you choose peace over people pleasing, when you choose rest over constant availability, when you say no without apology, that's not selfishness, it's healing. But to those who once benefited from your lack of boundaries, your healing feels like betrayal. These individuals will use emotional manipulation to draw you back in. They will act hurt, play the victim, bring up the past not to reconnect, but to reestablish the old dynamic where you were easily accessible, easily controlled, easily drained. And when they realize guilt isn't working, they may escalate to anger or passive aggression. That's because your boundary isn't just a line, it's a mirror. It forces them to see how much they've taken from you, and that reflection is uncomfortable. Guilt tripping is not love. Love respects your growth even when it feels unfamiliar. Love doesn't question your need for space, it honors it, but emotional manipulation disguises itself as concern. It makes you feel like you owe people access to your time, energy, and heart, even when it's hurting you. It whispers in your ear that being a good person means always saying yes, even when your soul is screaming no. This form of manipulation is subtle but devastating. You start second guessing yourself. You wonder if you're being too harsh, too distant, too different. You forget why you set the boundary in the first place, and slowly you begin to shrink again, not out of love, but out of fear of disappointing others. But your growth is not something to apologize for. Your healing is not something you need to defend. Every person has the right to protect their energy, to outgrow dynamics that once felt normal, to say, "I love you, but I also love myself." And if someone cannot accept that, it says more about their intentions than your transformation. Remember this, boundaries don't ruin relationships, they reveal them. If someone only values you when you're sacrificing your well-being for their comfort, they never truly valued you in the first place. Growth demands that you shed your skin. It demands that you leave behind the version of yourself that was built in survival, built in fear, built in limitation. But often, The people around you, especially those who have known you the longest, struggle to accept your transformation, not because they don't care about you, but because they're attached to the image of who you used to be. And that old image serves their comfort more than your evolution. These are the people who continuously remind you of your past mistakes, your flaws, your failures. You try to speak of your goals and ambitions, and they laugh, saying things like, "Remember when you couldn't even stick to anything for a week? Let's not forget who you really are. You doing that? Come on, don't kid yourself." They say it as a joke. They say it with a smirk, but beneath the surface, it's an attempt to drag you back to the level where they feel safe relating to you, because your growth threatens their sense of familiarity. You becoming disciplined, focused, or conscious means they can no longer treat you like the person who once tolerated mistreatment, lacked confidence, or accepted chaos. Shi Heng Yi teaches that identity is not fixed. It's fluid, ever-changing, like water adapting to its environment. But when others try to freeze you in your past, they're not seeing you, they're seeing their version of you. A version that fits neatly into the story they've told themselves about who you are and who you should remain. To accept your transformation would mean rewriting that story, and not everyone is willing to do that inner work. They cling to the old you because that version of you made them feel superior, comfortable, or in control. When you start showing strength, clarity, purpose, it disrupts that dynamic. Suddenly, the person they once dismissed is now setting boundaries. The person who once tolerated abuse is now walking away. The person they once underestimated is now rising. And instead of rising with you, they try to anchor you by using your past as a leash. It's subtle, but it's powerful. You begin to doubt yourself. You wonder, maybe they're right. Maybe I haven't changed that much. Maybe I'm just pretending. But this doubt doesn't come from truth, it comes from being surrounded by people who refuse to acknowledge your growth because it forces them to confront their own lack of it. This dynamic is especially painful when it comes from family or childhood friends. These are the people who knew you when, who say things like, "You're just putting on an act," or "Don't forget where you came from." But they confuse your origin with your destiny. You can honor your past without being imprisoned by it. Yes, you've made mistakes. Yes, you've been broken, lost, confused. But every step of that journey led you to where you are now, not to remain the same, but to evolve into someone wiser, stronger, more aware. And that evolution is sacred. It deserves respect, not ridicule. Understand this deeply. When people can't accept your growth, it's not your responsibility to shrink. Your job is not to make them comfortable with your new identity. Your job is to remain faithful to your highest self. The one you are becoming, the one they might not yet understand, the one they might never accept, and that's okay. One of the most overlooked yet dangerous signs that someone may be draining your spirit consciously or unconsciously is how they impact your sense of clarity. Healthy relationships, even when they involve disagreements, tend to leave you feeling understood, grounded, and emotionally balanced. But some people create the opposite effect. You leave conversations with them feeling unsure, mentally foggy, emotionally drained, or even questioning your own reality. This confusion isn't random, it's often intentional, and it's a subtle form of control. Shi Heng Yi teaches that true wisdom brings stillness, but when someone thrives on keeping your mind in turmoil, constantly second-guessing yourself, that's not connection, that's manipulation. These are the people who twist your words in arguments. You express a concern, and suddenly you're the problem. You speak your truth, and they distort it until you're apologizing for things you never even did. These are the masters of redirection, not because they seek understanding, but because they fear being exposed or losing power. Confusion becomes their weapon. The longer you feel unsure, the more they maintain control. They interrupt your sentences not to engage, but to destabilize you. They dismiss your ideas under the guise of playing devil's advocate. They act as if you're overreacting, too sensitive, or making things up even when your feelings are valid. Over time, you begin to censor yourself, you hesitate to speak, you replay conversations in your head, wondering if you misunderstood something. And worst of all, you begin to rely on them for emotional direction. This is not love, this is psychological disorientation. These individuals operate in gray areas where nothing is ever direct. They might say things like, "I didn't mean it like that, you're taking it the wrong way." Or, "You're always looking for something to fight about." Or, "You're being too emotional again." Notice how none of these statements seek to understand you, they only serve to invalidate and confuse you. They shift the focus from their behavior to your reaction, and in doing so, they slowly erode your confidence. It becomes harder to trust your intuition, harder to speak your truth, harder to feel stable in your own skin. The danger here isn't just emotional, it's spiritual, because when your clarity is under constant attack, your connection to your higher self weakens. You lose the inner stillness that guides your decisions. You become reactive instead of reflective. You start basing your worth on someone else's ability to understand you, rather than on your own alignment with truth. Shi Heng Yi reminds us that clarity is not something you find in noise, it's something you build in stillness. And the people around you either protect that stillness or shatter it. They either bring peace or provoke confusion. There is no in-between. If someone consistently makes you feel like you're walking on eggshells, unsure of what's real or how you should feel, that is not love. That is a form of control masked as connection. It is not your job to decode someone else's chaos. Your responsibility is to stay connected to truth, to protect your mental peace, and to recognize when someone's presence is a fog instead of a light. Because confusion is the first step toward control. And if they can control how you see reality, they can control how you see yourself. One of the clearest signs that someone is threatened by your growth is their reaction to your solitude. When you begin to withdraw from noise, distractions, or emotionally draining environments, not out of bitterness, but out of necessity, some people will take it personally. They will say you're being distant, cold, or selfish. But in truth, your solitude is not about avoiding people, it's about returning to yourself. And that is something people with hidden darkness cannot stand. Shi Heng Yi often emphasizes the sacred power of stillness. Silence is where truth speaks. In solitude, you start to hear your intuition clearly. You begin to process thoughts that were buried under noise. You start healing wounds that were constantly being reopened by others. But for someone who has relied on your presence to validate their own identity, your withdrawal is terrifying. Because in your absence, they are left alone with themselves, and that's where their real demons live. These are the individuals who fear being alone, not because they need your company, but because they need your energy, your attention, your emotional labor, your constant availability. It fed something in them. Maybe it filled their loneliness, maybe it distracted them from their own inner conflicts, maybe it made them feel important, in control, or needed. But when you step away, the illusion breaks, and they begin to feel the emptiness they've been running from. They may respond by trying to pull you back with guilt. You used to care more. You're not the same person anymore. Ever since you started changing, you've become distant. But what they're really saying is, your peace makes me uncomfortable because it reminds me of my lack of it. They may attempt to re-engage you with drama, provoke emotional responses, or create situations where you feel obligated to return to old roles, the helper, the fixer, the emotional support system. But you've outgrown that role. You've realized that being constantly available to others often left you unavailable to yourself. And now, in your solitude, you are meeting the version of yourself that was always waiting underneath the noise. This solitude is not isolation, it's refinement. It's where your mind becomes sharp, your energy becomes protected, and your spirit becomes aligned. It's where you detach from external opinions and begin to trust your internal compass. But those who have manipulated you, leaned on you too heavily, or kept you emotionally distracted, they will not celebrate this transformation, because your silence reveals their noise. Your peace exposes their chaos. Your self-mastery shines a light on their self-neglect. These people don't want you to be alone, not because they fear for you, but because they fear what you'll become without them. They know that solitude is where you stop tolerating disrespect. It's where you identify patterns and realize who has been draining you. It's where you start choosing people not from fear of being alone, but from love of your own presence. Shi Heng Yi teaches that real strength is not built in battle, it's built in silence. And when someone can't respect your time alone, when they interrupt your stillness, or make you feel guilty for healing quietly, they are not protecting your growth. They are resisting it. Because they know the more time you spend in solitude, the less permission you need from others to be whole. So now you've seen the signs, not monsters with claws, but familiar faces carrying subtle poisons. Not enemies in the shadows, but loved ones with unresolved darkness. The true demons aren't always loud. Sometimes they whisper. Sometimes they smile. Sometimes they say, "I love you," while pulling you away from your truth. But this journey isn't about hate, blame, or bitterness. It's about awareness, because once you become aware, you gain power. You stop handing your energy to people who drain it. You stop apologizing for your boundaries. You stop shrinking to keep others comfortable. Shi Heng Yi teaches that the highest form of discipline is inner clarity, and when you truly see, not just with your eyes, but with your spirit, you can walk away from toxic patterns with peace, not anger. You can protect your light without becoming hard. You can love people from a distance and still honor your path. Not everyone is meant to walk with you. Some are meant to teach you, test you, and ultimately free you. Your job is not to fight the demons in others. Your job is to stay rooted in your truth, grounded in your awareness, and committed to your growth even when it means walking alone. Because solitude in truth is far more powerful than company in illusion. Keep rising, keep seeing, keep protecting your peace, and remember, the more silent you become, the more clearly you'll hear who is for you and who was just a noise.